Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. I am very excited about today's video because today is my top reads of 2025 video. So after this quick intro, we'll be right back to toast my top books of the year. My top reads of 2025 is split into two different sections. The first section is going to be releases from 2025 that made my favorites list. And the last section is going to be backlist books that I read in 2025 that made my favorites list. Each list has 6 books. So let's go ahead and get started with the top 2025 books for me. I need to mention that these are in no particular order. I did not rank my favorites this year. So with that out of the way, one of my favorite 2025 releases is The Lamb, the debut novel from Lucy Rose. And wow, what a debut. I will briefly discuss it here because I do have a new release vlog where I read it and discussed it in depth. But this story follows young Margot and her mama who live in a rural setting in the isolated countryside of England. Their food of choice happens to be people who wander near their property. Mama calls these people strays. So Margot begins to want a different kind of life for herself. She wants to belong. She wants friendship. She yearns to be accepted by her mother, but her mother never truly accepts her. And then to make matters worse, a woman by the name of Eden wanders on their property, and Mama decides to invite Eden to live in their home with them. This book absolutely gutted me. No pun intended. It is a disturbing story of a little girl who just wants to belong, who just wants to be accepted. And the ending absolutely wrecked me. But that's all I'm going to say about it, because if you want to know more, you can check out that new release vlog. The next book I want to talk about is also included in that new release vlog. I read Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. So Hungerstone is a reimagining of Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, except Kat Dunn leans heavily into the sapphic relationship between Carmilla and the main character, Lenore. So Lenore's husband, Henry, is like a real jackass, and they end up leaving the city of London to go to a more isolated setting in the British Moors because Henry is throwing this hunting party to try to impress the elite. This story is set in the Victorian era at the height of the Industrial Revolution and has themes of the woman, the angel in the house versus the fallen or the new woman. Carmilla enters into their lives through a carriage accident, much like the original text. And Carmilla begins to awaken desire and agency in main character Lenore. This is absolutely delicious and totally good for her. So in the next book that made my favorites of 2025 top releases of the year is Black Flame by Gretchen Felker Martin. So I'm going to get a sip of my champagne and try to describe this book to you. So Black Flame involves a cursed film. It deals with the past coming back to haunt the present, secrets. It's got a very fever dream type of atmosphere. There were times I definitely felt like, what is going on? Main character Ellen is a closeted and repressed woman who works as a film restorer. She is tasked with restoring a film called The Baroness, and this film is an exploitation film thought to have been destroyed by the Nazis. As Ellen works on restoring this film, she is plagued by voices and visuals, and she becomes convinced that this film is real and that she is responsible for releasing the occult horrors of this film out into the world. As she goes through this experience, she is forced to confront her own past and her true desires. This book deals with Jewish identity and queer identity and the intersection of the two. The ending absolutely devastated me. And it definitely leans into the theme of the cost of not living your authentic truth. Content warnings, heavy content warnings for Black Flame, including depictions of the Holocaust, homophobia, misogyny, SA, violence, and graphic descriptions of all of the above. But it just has stuck with me. And I read Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker Martin this year too, and I also enjoyed it, but Black Flame hit me harder. And that's why it made this list. So the next book I want to talk about is Spread Me by Sarah Gailey. So we're moving into some lighter territory now. So for Spread Me, think John Carpenter's The Thing with a bit of Alien, and then set it at a remote outpost in the desert. Throw in some erotica, and then you have Sarah Gailey's Spread Me. Main character Kinsey is the team lead at this outpost, and she really loves the solitude that this position allows her because she's able to be isolated from the rest of the world and the temptations uh, that plague her out in the world. But even though she's in this isolated outpost, Kinsey finds herself unable to flee from that temptation. Because as others are hooking up with each other, Kinsey has a desire to hook up with someone or something very different and very unusual. This particular temptation comes right to her front door, so to speak. She lets it in, breaking quarantine by letting this mysterious specimen into their space. And as Kinsey begins to explore this specimen, she is forced to confront the one thing that she truly desires. That's all I really want to say about Spread Me, because the less you know about it going into it, I think the better. So the next book I want to talk about is Veil by Jonathan Janz. This book I squeezed in right at the end of the year. I was determined to finish reading it once I started because I felt like it was really going to make my top list. So let me tell you what Veil is about. So it is a sci-fi horror, and sci-fi, it has to be a very particular type for it to work for me. I love The Thing and I love Alien, so going into this one, I had hopes that this could also meet those kind of expectations. So in Veil, people start to disappear. At first, they're disappearing only at night, but then they're being taken in the broad daylight hours in front of everyone. Nowhere is safe. Initially, people think that hiding in their homes will make them safe, but eventually they start to disappear from their homes as well. The main character, John, is a high school teacher, and he has a bit of an estranged relationship with his son because he and his wife are separated. And on this particular night, his son is spending time with him and disappears. After this, John goes on to face loss after loss in this devastating world where people are constantly disappearing. We have themes of family, both literal blood family, but also found family, themes of confronting your past mistakes and resolving to change, themes of letting your kids go, letting your kids grow up. There's incredible imagery in this book. It is very cinematic, and I would love to see this adapted to film. I also want to share a couple of quotes with you from Vale. The first one is, "Remarkable how the mundanities of life continue during a crisis." The other quote is, "God, it all went so fast. I wanted my kids to stay little forever. There's nothing like the way you love your children, the joy you get from them, how happy you are just to sit and feel loved when they look at you, like you're someone, like you matter." This also has themes of the sacrifices that we make and the lengths we go to in order to rescue those we love. This book at alternate times had me feeling anxiety and panic, and at other times had me in tears. It's also a commentary on human nature and humanity and how people respond to and react to times of crisis. It did have some commentary that was obviously related to the pandemic and the ways that some people acted versus the ways that other people acted. So I felt like this book was a perfect book for the time that we're living in. Then the last new release book that made my favorites is the October Film Haunt by Michael Wehunt. Think the Blair Witch Project meets The Ring meets Night Film by Marisha Pessel. In the October Film Haunt, you have urban legends, you have a cursed film, the occult, cults, it's meta. It speaks about the danger of online communities, and it has themes of belonging and what one might do in order to belong. So, in the October Film Hunt, the main character, Jory Stroud, lives an isolated life by her own choice after her popular blog titled The October Film Hunt was implicated in the tragic death of a young woman. So, the October Film Hunt was a blog series where Josie and her two friends would go and travel to these different places that were supposedly haunted. So, the particular entry that led to the fatal results that caused Jory to go into hiding was about a supposedly cursed film called Proof of Demons that was directed by the enigmatic and reclusive Helene Enriquez. So, after Josie has been in isolation for 10 years, she has stopped following horror. She's made it to where she and her son can live this private life, or so she thinks, because one day she receives this mysterious videotape in the mail, and she starts to fear that someone is filming her with the intent of making a sequel to Proof of Demons featuring her as the final girl. This book genuinely scared me in a few parts, and I was looking around, trying to to make sure nobody was looking at me, filming me. It also has elements. I don't know if I mentioned, like I did, like The Ring. The idea of if you watch something, then you're also going to be cursed. It had just a lot to bring to the table as far as a unique story, even though, as I mentioned, it had elements of some of these other stories. It did something that was truly unique. And the ending is a little bit ambiguous, but I like that. I'm still thinking about this book and processing it. I plan to reread it pretty soon because it is one of those books that warrants a second, maybe even third read in order to catch all of the plot devices and elements that Michael Wehunt so beautifully weaves into this very creepy novel. Now we have arrived at my top 6 backlist books that I read in 2025. So the first one I want to talk about is Night Film by Marisha Pessel, which you can see is tabbed and annotated to hell and back. I did a deep dive video talking about Night Film. So here I'm just going to give you a little brief synopsis and just a brief look into my thoughts about Night Film. So, as I mentioned, written by Marisha Pessel, published in 2013. It is a mingling of genres: mystery, thriller, suspense, horror, noir, mixed media formats, postmodern. The synopsis: you have an investigative journalist by the name of Scott McGrath who seeks to uncover the truth behind 24-year-old Ashley Cordova's death, ruled a suicide by the police. And he seeks to untangle the mysteries surrounding not only Ashley, but also her father, the legendary reclusive cult horror film director Stanislaus Cordova, and their seemingly cursed family. So, if you like Twin Peaks, if you like the October Film Hunt, because I did compare Night Film with October Film Hunt, if those appeal to you, then check out Night Film if you haven't already. The next backlist book that made my favorites of 2025 is The Night Parade by Ronald Malfi. It was published in 2016. I have a review that I talk in depth about Night Film, which I will also link down in the description box below. So here I'll just give my brief thoughts about it and a brief synopsis. It is both apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic. It is about a father who is on a road trip with his daughter during this plague called Wanderer's Folly. It is a disease which causes not only profuse bleeding, but also delusions. And it is wiping out humanity. This daughter may have a particular gift that makes her very important in the fighting of this particular plague. So think Firestarter meets The Last of Us. There was a genuinely terrifying scene in this novel featuring an ice cream man that still unnerves me if I think about it at night. Just think about an ice cream truck playing music in the middle of the night, and it just goes on from there to now I've got chills thinking about it. So, and I very rarely get scared by anything, but that scene in this book, if you read it for nothing else, read it for that. The next book I want to talk about is Idle Hands by Cassandra Windwalker. It was published in 2020. I did do a review of it, including my favorite quote. So I'll link that down in the description box below. So here, let me get another sip of my champagne as we toast Idle Hands. And I will tell you what it's about. So the main character, Purdy, makes a deal, unbeknownst to her, a deal with the devil in order to undo a past decision. The narrator of the story, however, is Ella, who some may call the devil, who is the character that Purdy makes the deal with. Throughout the novel, Ella, or as I mentioned, some may call her the devil, she muses about human nature and the choices that people agonize over, thinking that each choice they make plays a pivotal role in shaping their future and the futures of those around them. When, according to Ella, the choices that humans make often have little to no difference in the long term. So it has themes of fate versus free will, predestination, and it also reminded me of the fates in Greek mythology, this idea that whatever path the fates have laid out for you, that you can't change that. And even if you go back to the past and you undo a certain decision to avoid a certain kind of pain, you will still have other pain because of the different decisions you make. So probably don't go into it if you're not in a great headspace. Then the next backlist book I want to talk about is Private Rights by Julia Armfield. I also included Private Rights in the same video as Idle Hands, where I gave a brief review and shared my favorite quotes. So Private Rights was published in 2024. My Goodreads review of Private Rights simply stated this book, this is why I read. It is a reimagining of Shakespeare's King Lear. It is about three estranged sisters, Isla, Irene, and Agnes, who reunite after the death of their architect father. The story is set in a London that is ravaged by unending rain and flooding. As the sisters sort through their childhood home and their memories, they start to uncover dark family secrets connected to their mother's mysterious disappearance. They also uncover a past of sinister rituals. The three sisters are forced to confront their fractured relationships with one another and their familial trauma, all while facing a mysterious threat tied to a hidden purpose for which they've been chosen, of which they have no idea. This has themes of grief, of childhood trauma, sisterhood, of home, and life. One of the quotes, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it is about how all of our life moments are one on top of the other. There's a particular passage where one of the sisters is standing in the kitchen of the childhood home in which she grew up, and she thinks, I'm standing here as, a young adult woman, but I'm also standing here as a 5-year-old child, as a preteen, as a teenager. And that just hit me, that idea of going back to your home and feeling like you're all of the people that you've ever been when you lived in that particular place. Just a stunningly beautiful book. So the next backlist book that I want to talk about is Dark Matter by Michelle Paver, which was published in 2010. This was part of my Polar Gothic series, part 2, which I will link down in the description box below because I was vlogging about it, so I was talking quite a bit about it. But Dark Matter is set in the 1930s. It is about an Arctic expedition in a remote and uninhabited location. Main character Jack ends up alone in this location, facing the polar night and a haunting presence that lingers outside his dwelling place. It is very unsettling, definitely leans into the uncanny and the eerie. It is a perfect winter read. Then finally, the last backlist book that made my favorites is Model Home by Rivers Solomon, which was published in 2024. So Model Home is very literary. It is metaphorical. It is a haunted house story, but through the lens of familial and racial trauma. It features siblings returning to their childhood home after their parents' deaths. The themes, and I'm also going to include within these themes content warnings: segregation, racism, child abuse, queer identity, homophobia, systemic racism, and its lasting effects on those affected by it. And this is another one of those books that I feel like the less you know going into it, the better your reading experience will be. So forgive me for some rambling in this video, but a toast to my top reads of 2025. Please let me know if you read any of these books and if they made your top list or even your bottom list. If I didn't mention some of your favorites, please let me know in the comments what those are. And if you watched and you don't know what to leave, you can leave a champagne emoji or a book emoji, whichever strikes you. And thank you for watching. I would love it if you would hit like, subscribe, hit that bell, and that way we can keep on toasting to our favorite books. I will see you in the next video.